Hey guys, thanks for visiting KnowHimKroll.com. I'm here with Dan May, who I actually interviewed a couple years back at NAB when the first URSA, which we're shooting this on, was first released. And now it's a year and a half later. We have the new sensor. We've got the URSA Mini. I really want to talk to you a little bit about the sensor first and foremost, the 4.6K version. For anyone that hasn't had a chance to read up on it yet online, can you give us the pitch, just a brief rundown?
Yeah, the nickel tour on the 4.6K sensor. Really exciting to first of all be able to kind of fulfill the upgradability of the original URSA, to say, you're getting that 4K sensor and it's a great sensor, but the upgradability of URSA, being able to provide a new sensor that may have new features that people are interested in. Now the 4.6K sensor, obviously, as the name implies, has extra resolution on there, but that's not really where everyone gets super excited about. The great things about the 4.6K sensor are the things like the fact that it can either do a global or a rolling shutter. So whereas the 4K sensor is a 12 stop sub-dynamic range with a global shutter, which is fantastic, this is a ability to do, we think it's going to be in the 12 to 13 stops with global, or it can go up to 15 stops at dynamic range with a rolling shutter. So that's great if I say, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do sports, I definitely want that global shutter, I'm going to go ahead and change it to that setting. But if I'm going to be doing some kind of corporate, or maybe I'm doing cinematic work, and I want the extra dynamic range, but I know I'm not panning and whipping around, I'll go ahead and use that rolling shutter with the 15 stops at dynamic range. So that's really exciting as well. It's also going to be a bit higher of an ISO setting, should be a native 800 ISO, whereas the 4K is a native 400, so that's just going to give you a little more range there as well. So super exciting to get this sensor. We look forward to getting it into people's hands. We're showing it here today at the Blackmagic Day, so it's really exciting for us to get into people's hands.
Yeah, I mean, it looks amazing from the footage I've seen so far, which was minimal, but it looked absolutely incredible, and I definitely can't wait to get one on this camera, which I'll be using for a feature later this year. I did want to ask you, other than the dynamic range, which obviously there is a difference when you switch from global to rolling, any other differences as far as frame rates or anything else that are accessible in one version?
The big thing with the new sensor is it does have the ability to do higher frame rates. So on a regular URSA, we can do up to 120 frames of Ultra HD and up to, I think it's 240 frames in HD, whereas the 4K sensor is obviously about half of that. So where that gets even more confusing is because it can do that in the full-size URSA, but we also have, of course, the new URSA Mini that we announced, but that's kind of limited at that 60 frames for Ultra HD and 120 frames for HD. So it gets confusing because you talk about these sensors and the two different sensors, but there's also the two different cameras, and that makes a difference as well.
Definitely. I'm guessing the hardware and just the fact it's a smaller camera and the heat issues and all of that. So you mentioned upgrading the sensor, and I think one of the most exciting things for me with this camera was the fact that it has longevity. You can upgrade it for potentially years to come. When it was first announced, there was a possibility of doing a B4 mount, I think maybe an HDMI. Are those still in the cards?
Yeah, they're still on the table. We've kind of had a bit of dialogue about whether that's the right camera to have that on, or do we need to be looking at one of our other form factors, or even an entirely different form factor for a B4. And this kind of dialogue comes around and it kind of puts a wrinkle in the plans of what we want to do. So it was our intent to do a B4 version of the URSA with the upgradability. The 4K sensor was certainly we've kind of realized wasn't the right sensor for that camera. But then the question becomes, is it the right form factor for the camera for a B4 version, or do we need a different version of that? So that's still kind of a work in progress where we're trying to work out what we want to do there. But certainly there's interest on our part about how we want to address that segment of the market.
That's good to know. I mean, one thing I was curious about, not that you guys had ever alluded to this, but whether or not there would be a 4x3 sensor, something that you could do anamorphic on. Is that a possibility, or is that something you can talk about?
All of those things are possibilities. We've added some new anamorphic settings in there that we can do via software within the camera. So there's some cool things that we're doing. We always want to be able to update the cameras we already have. Obviously we're a creative bunch and always trying to figure out how to get new features and new products out there. So we'll have to see what the future brings there. We obviously like to surprise people with new things. So right now we're really kind of focused on getting those 4.6K sensors out in the new URSA Minis as well. So
that's amazing. Yeah, and speaking of, I'm going to jump over the URSA Mini for a second. Just going to the micro cinema camera.
Yep.
Obviously, it is a different sensor. How much of the technology is shared sensor-wise between that and either the URSA or the Pocket Cam? Are there some similarities?
I mean, it is essentially the pocket camera size sensor that we see in the micro cinema camera. The micro cinema camera is essentially a pocket camera that's been put into a new body. So the only real things you're going to see feature-wise from the sensor, so to speak, is the fact that we can do 60 frames on that body, whereas the pocket camera limited itself to 30 frames in HD. This is obviously an HD camera, but it's the same sensor that we're using in the pocket cinema camera.
That's amazing. Yeah, one thing I've noticed with your products is no matter what, I mean, coming from, I had the original 2.5K version version. I've had multiple products from you guys, and there's this similarity even when there's a completely different sensor. I can intercut this URSA with the 4K sensor with the original 2.5K. They're different sensors, different crop factors and all that, but they still intercut so well, and there's still this look that is very sort of beautiful and neutral and cinematic that is across the board. And I think that's technologically, I'm not sure what that is. I would imagine that's just the color science.
A lot of it's the color science, the fact that a lot of what Blackmagic's been able to do over the last few years is acquire a lot of IP between Cintel and DaVinci and these different acquisitions that we've made. We're able to utilize that IP across a number of different products. So we may make an acquisition like Teranex, where we have this great Teranex product, but it gives us all kinds of IP that we're able to put in other products. Same with Cintel, and same with, particularly for the color science and the cameras, same with DaVinci. We're able to pull that across multiple different products. And it's a great benefit we have as a company to have this portfolio and be able to share that technology across all these products.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And one thing to sort of wrap up on, I guess what impressed me most this year at NAB, I was front and center for the product launches and 38 new, or however many new products.
30 new SKUs or something.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
One thing that really impressed me though was you guys don't seem to really cannibalize your own products. So as opposed to coming out with another pocket camera the next year, you have a micro camera, so it sort of serves a different market.
Definitely.
Maybe someone who's using drones or some other specific application. With that said, though, looking at the pocket camera, which is still so popular, is there a possibility of updating that, or is the micro camera sort of the next iteration of that?
I think the pocket camera still has a lot of legs left in it. Those cameras are different mostly because of their form factor. So, how much more development gets put into a pocket camera or a 2.5K camera? There are certainly things that can be done there that may be shared across multiple cameras. It may not obviously be the front of the line as far as development, because we do have new products, and we obviously we're still a business. We want to drive new revenue and new business. If we can make a product that is still current and valid, like a pocket camera or even a 2.5K camera, we will. But sometimes it doesn't take the priority as to getting some of these new products out the door. But no, we don't really want to cannibalize our own lines. We obviously are very driven by what the customer needs or wants. So things like that micro camera, things like URSA Mini, that's a lot of user feedback that comes over the last few years to say, I love this product, but I'd like to see this. We have to go back and sort out, okay, well, is that a real model that we can chase, or is that something that's going to be something that's only valid for a year? But we do take all that feedback, and we spend a lot of time going over what we think is going to be best for the customer and what's going to work for us as well.
Absolutely, and that makes sense. And I think what you guys have been so great at too is sort of showing the filmmaking community what taking them away from the DSLR world. I think, personally speaking, Blackmagic has been the company for me and for a lot of filmmakers that has sort of shifted gears away from shooting on 5Ds and GH2s and GH3s and looking at, okay, let's go back to a more traditional style and something that's affordable, which hasn't been affordable for so long. So you guys are able to deliver that quality in a package that guys like me can just go and buy off the shelf. So, I thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
It's made my life a lot easier and more enjoyable on set. And for now, I guess I'll leave you to it. If anyone wants to check out more info on this, obviously you can visit blackmagicdesign.com, and I'll let you get back to the rest of the show.
Thanks.
Here. But thank you so much.
Appreciate it so much.